Hey folks, hope you all are doing well. I'm Karan Bandal from Econosite, and in this video let's talk about China's slowing economy and its rising debt. For the past 3 decades or so, China impressed everyone with staggering GDP growth rates, at times clocking over 10% consistently. This is partly why China's GDP per capita is 4 times that of India's now. And up until 1985, India's GDP per capita was greater than China's. China now stands as the second largest economy in the world. But this growth brought along with it a major problem for China: debt. Now, if China's economy was growing at 7, 8, 9% like in the past, China's debt level might not have raised any eyebrows. But China's economy has slowed to sub 5% growth rates after 2019, and its debt appears to be rising faster than the GDP. So, how much debt is there exactly in case of China? Let's talk about how to quantify sovereign debt first. For a nation, debt is usually measured in relation to the size of its economy. For example, the US government carries the highest debt load in the world as of mid 2024. So it's quite dramatic to say that US government debt has hit a record high of $35 trillion. But US is also the world's largest economy at around $28 trillion. So the US government debt as a percentage of its GDP is a little over 120%. This debt to GDP ratio is then used to compare different nations on sovereign debt. We'll talk about one more aspect of debt and then we'll talk about China's numbers. In any nation, primarily there are 3 types of debt. Number 1, government debt. This is the money central government and state or local governments borrow. Number 2, corporate debt. This is the money borrowed by the private sector or companies in that nation. And number 3, household debt. This is the money that individuals like you and me borrow. Now, in case of China, if you add up these 3 types of debt, as of the end of 2023, China's debt had reached 297% of its GDP, and as of mid 2024, it is expected to have crossed a new high of 300%. Now, technically, we can't add the 3 debts up because these debts are held by 3 different sectors. So, these 3 ratios are separate indicators of debt. But looking at them together speaks to the quantum of debt in the system. Anyways, see how the debt has grown since 2014. Government and households have seen the most increase in their debt loads, whereas private sector debt has gone down as a share of the GDP. Key takeaway here is that China's debt is rising faster than the GDP, and government or public debt is rising as a share of China's GDP. Here's how China's debt compares with that of the United States and Japan. India's debt load is low, but India is also quite a bit behind the development journey of these 3 nations. Now, the reason experts fret about China's high debt load is that China appears to be following in the footsteps of Japan. And that's bad because Japan, like China, experienced the economic miracle period in 1960s through the 80s. Then in the early 1990s, Japan experienced a severe economic slowdown, and its GDP has kind of stagnated since then. See, Japan's GDP was over $5.5 trillion in 1995. What do you think Japan's GDP was in 2023? It was barely over $4 trillion. That's stagnation. Look at the trends in public and private debts in China and Japan now. China's private debt seems to be stabilizing or going down. China's public or government debt is on the way up. China's debt lines are in light blue. China's debt is mimicking Japan's with a roughly 30-year lag. Therefore, experts worry that such high debt levels in China may lead to stagnation in its economy, like what Japan has experienced. In summary, China's economy is slowing and its debt rising. China's debt is clearly rising faster than the GDP, as evident by the fact that if you add up China's public, household and corporate debt together, it has kept on growing over the past decade and has crossed a record 300% of the GDP. China's debt trends are looking dangerously like Japan's, highlighting the pressing need for China's policymaker to address its debt problem. I hope you found this analysis interesting. I'll speak with you again next week. Until then, take care.